Welcome back, guys. جنة تامر، حسن جودة، حسن رحيم، ياسين، يوسف عوض، تدرس بغدادي. Welcome all. 3 4 5 6 7 8. عالية، أسامة درويش. So I have بغدادي، عالية، حسن جودة، أسامة درويش، حسن رحيم، تدرس، ياسمين، سعيد، ياسين السعيد، Yusuf Awad, and Jannah Tamer. So I have 10 students so far. This is Jannah Gouda. So you are 11. Okay. In the first session, we stopped here. The snows of Stalingrad. This is the title of the part we're going to do. The snows of Stalingrad. Can anybody remind me what Stalingrad is? What is Stalingrad? What is Stalingrad? If you know the answer, please put your hands up. What is Stalingrad? We said it in the first session. Tadrus? Tadrus, are you there?
I'm here.
What's Stalingrad? Tadrus, I called you in
I
the
think it's
session. You weren't there. I called you.
okay. I didn't hear.
Okay. Be careful.
It's a city in Russia.
Good. It's a city in Russia, and it was a big battle in which maybe millions of Germans were killed. I think more than 1.5 million German people were killed in Stalingrad. Okay, they were taken captives, and most of them died there in Stalingrad, Russia. Good. You know, Germany invaded Russia in World War II. Okay, thank you, Tedros. The snows of Stalingrad, you know, in Stalingrad in the winter, it's snowy most of the time. So, in the middle of January 1943, in the middle of World War II, the corridor of Himmel Street was its dark, miserable self, the same. Liesel shut the gate. Remember, Hans Huberman is in the battle now. He is not home. He was called for to join the army and made her way to Frau Holzapfel. If you remember this name, this is the lady who used to spit on the gate of Huberman's, and every night Liesel was the one who cleaned it. Remember in the first term. So the girl went to Frau Holzapfel's door and knocked. She was surprised by the answerer. Somebody answered her. Her first thought was that the man must have been one of her sons. She was answered by one of Frau Holzapfel's sons, but he did not look like either of the brothers in the framed photos by the door. He didn't like one in the framed photo by the door. He seemed far too old. In fact, he was one of her kids, but because of the war, he looked that old. Although it was difficult to tell, his face was dotted with whiskers and his eyes looked painful and loud. A bandaged hand, his hand was bandaged, fell out of his coat sleeve, and cherries of blood were seeping through the wrapping. His hand was bandaged and it was still bleeding. Perhaps you should come back later, the man said to Liesel when she knocked on Frau Holzapfel's door. You should come back later. Why? We'll know soon. Liesel tried to look past him. She was close to calling out for or to Frau Holzapfel, but the man blocked her. Child, he said, come back later. I'll get you. Where are you from? I'll come and take you. Uh, where are you from? More than 3 hours later, a knock arrived at 33 Himmel Street. This is Liesel's address. And the man stood before her. The cherries of blood had grown into plums. The spots of blood, the small spots of blood in his hand, in his bandage, got bigger and bigger because his hand was still bleeding. Why will know soon. She's ready for you now. My mum is ready for you now. Outside, in the fuzzy gray light, Liesel couldn't help asking the man what had happened to his hand. He blew some air from his nostrils, from his nose, a single syllable before his reply, Stalingrad. His answer was Stalingrad. The girl asked him, what's wrong with your hand? Why is it bleeding? Why is it in bandage and bleeding? He said, Stalingrad. This means he was one of those men who fought in Stalingrad in Russia. She said sorry, she didn't understand what Stalingrad means. He had locked into the wind when he spoke. I couldn't hear you. He answered again, only louder, and now he answered the question fully. Stalingrad happened to my hand. Something called Stalingrad happened to my hand. Child, I was shot in the ribs, in my chest, and I had three of my fingers blown off, cut off. Does that answer your question? He placed his uninjured hand in his pocket and shivered with contempt for the German wind. You think it's cold here? He asks her here sarcastically, comparing the cold wind of Germany to the cold in or the snow in back in Stalingrad. Liesel touched the wall at her side. She couldn't lie. Yes, of course it's cold. The man laughed. This isn't cold. He means compared to the cold in Stalingrad, this isn't cold. He pulled out a cigarette and placed it in his mouth, one handed. He tried to light a match. The other hand is injured. He tried to light the match to lit the cigarette or to light the cigarette with one hand. In the dismal weather, it was or it would have been difficult for both hands. Imagine he has one hand now, but with just the one, it was impossible. He dropped the matchbox and swore. Liesel picked it up. She took the cigarette or his cigarette and put it in her mouth. She too could not light it. You have to suck on it, the man explained. In this weather, it only lights when you suck. Versteht? Do you understand? Uh, she gave it another go, trying to remember how Papa did it. This time, her mouth filled with smoke. It climbed her teeth and scratched her throat, and she restrained herself from coughing. She didn't cough. Well done. When he took the cigarette and breathed it in, he reached out his uninjured left or hand, his left, Michael Holzapfel. This is his name. Michael Holzapfel. This means he was the son of Frau Holzapfel. Liesel Memminger, she said her name. You're coming to read to my mother. So this is the reason why Liesel was visiting Frau Holzapfel. Guys, Abdurrahman, you're late, Abdurrahman. So, uh, the girl was in the habit of visiting Frau Holzapfel. Why? To read for her. Again, for the third time, Liesel was in the habit of visiting Frau Holzapfel, one of their neighbors. Why? To read for her. So, Michael said to her, you're coming to read to my mother. Rosa arrived behind her at that point, and Liesel could feel the shock at her back. Michael, she asked, is that you? Michael Holzapfel nodded. Guten Tag, Frau Huberman. It's been a long time. You look so old. Rosa was still in a shock because, again, Michael looked so old. He's just come back from the Battle of Stalingrad and he looks older and older. But she composed herself. Would you like to come in? She said to Michael. I see you met my foster daughter, Liesel. Her voice trailed off as she noticed the blooded hand. She saw his blooded hand. My brother's dead, he said to her. This is why he sent Liesel away when she first went to visit his mom. My brother's dead, said Michael Holzapfel, and he could not have delivered the punch any better with his one usable fist. For Rosa staggered, certainly, war meant dying, but it always shifted the ground beneath a person's feet when it was someone who had once lived and breathed in close proximity. Excuse me. Rosa had watched both of the Holzapfel boys grow up. So Michael is injured, and his brother, whose name we'll know soon, was killed. The oldened young man, Michael looks old now, somehow found a way to list what happened without losing his nerve. I was in one of the buildings, he describes what happened to him, we used for a hospital when they brought my brother in. It was a week before I was coming home. I spent 3 days of that week sitting with him before he died. I'm sorry, who said this, Rosa? It was someone else standing behind Liesel Meminger that evening, but she did not dare to look. Huh? Oh, so please, Michael stopped her. Don't say anything else. Can I take the girl to read for my mom? I doubt my mother will hear it. Why? Because her son is injured and the other son was killed. But she said for her to come. Yes, take her. So Liesel is going with Michael Holzapfel to read for his mom. They were halfway down the path when Michael remembered himself and returned. Rosa, he called Rosa back. There was a moment of waiting while Mama rewinded the door. She opened the door. I heard your son was there, young or junior Hans Jr. In Russia. I ran into someone else from Malking and they told me, but I'm sure you know that already. Rosa tried to prevent his exit. When she heard that her son was in Stalingrad, she rushed out and held his sleeve. No, he left here one day. Remember when he left angry after the fight with his dad and accused dad of being a coward? He left here one day and never came back. We tried to find him, but then so much happened. There was da da da. Okay, Michael Holzapfel was determined to escape because he was sure that Hans Jr. was killed in Stalingrad. The last thing he wanted to hear was yet another sob story. He didn't want another mom to cry. Pulling himself away, he said, as far as I know, he's alive. He joined Liesel at the gate and escaped, but the girl did not walk next door. She watched Rosa's face. It lifted and dropped in the same moment. Mama, Rosa raised her hand. Go. Liesel waited. I said go. When she caught up to him, the returned soldier tried to make conversation. He must have regretted his verbal mistake with Rosa. He remembered that he mustn't have told her about her son, and he tried to bury it beneath some other words. Holding up the bandaged hand, he said, I still can't get it to stop bleeding. My hand is still bleeding. Liesel was actually glad to enter the Halsapfel's kitchen. The sooner she started reading, the better. Frau Holzapfel sat with wet streams of wire on her face. Uh, Her son was dead, but that was only the half of it. She would never really know how it occurred, But I can tell you this is the narrator death telling us how Robert Holzapfel died. So we have two Holzapfel boys, Michael, the one who is injured, and the one who died in Stalingrad is called Robert. I can tell you without question that one of us here knows. I always seem to know what happened when there was snow and guns and the various confusions of human language. When I imagine Frau Holzapfel's kitchen from the book Thief's words, I don't see the stove or the wooden spoons or the water pump or anything of that sort. Not to begin with, anyway. What I see is the Russian winter and the snow falling from the ceiling and the fate of Frau Holzapfel's second son. His name was Robert, and what happened to him was this: a small war story. His legs was blown off at the shins, the shins, the front of your leg, and he died with his brother watching in a cold stench filled hospital. It was Stenchy. It was Russia, January 5th, 43, and just another icy day out among the icy and snow, or among the city and snow, sorry, there were dead Russians and Germans everywhere. Those who remained were firing into the blank pages in front of them. They were just firing. Three languages interwove. There were three languages spoken at the same time: Russian, German, and the language of bullets. This is a metaphor, guys, because bullets don't have language. We can say that this is a personification because he or the writer or the narrator likens bullets to people who have language here. As I made my way through the fallen souls, this is death speaking. One of the men was saying, "My stomach is itchy." He said it many times over. Despite his shock, he crawled up ahead to a dark, disfigured figure who sat steaming or streaming on the ground. When the soldier with the wounded stomach arrived, he could see that it was Robert Holzapfel. His hands were caked in blood, and he was heaping snow onto the area just above his shins. He was uh, putting much snow on the area just above his shins because his shins were blown off, where his legs and had been cut off by the last explosion. There were hot hands and a red scream. Steam rose from the ground, the sight and smell of rotting snow. "It's me," the soldier said to him. "It's Peter." He dragged himself a few inches closer. "Peter," Robert asked, a vanishing voice. He must have felt me nearby. A second time, "Peter," he said, "Peter, Peter," and then, for some reason, dying men always ask questions they know the answer to. Perhaps it's so they can die being right. The voices suddenly all sounded the same. Robert Holzapfel collapsed to his right onto the cold and steamy ground. I'm sure he expected to meet me there and then. He didn't. Unfortunately, for the young German, I did not take him that afternoon. I didn't take his soul. This is death again. I stepped over him. I stepped over him with the other poor souls in my arms and made my way back to the Russians. I went to take the souls of some of the Russians. Back and forth I traveled from the hospital to the battlefield to the hospital again. Disassembled men took the souls of men. It was no ski trip, I can tell you. As Michael told his mother, it was 3 very long days later that I finally came for the soldier who left his feet behind in Stalingrad. I showed up very much invited at the temporary hospital and flinched at the smell. A man with a bandaged hand, maybe this is Michael, was telling the mute, shock faced soldier that he would survive. He was saying to his brother, "You will survive, you will survive, you'll soon be going home," he assured him. Yes, Home, I thought, for good, forever. Yes, he's going home, but dead and forever. I'll wait for you, Michael said to his brother Robert. I was going back at the end of the week, but I'll wait. In the middle of the brother's next sentence, I gathered up the soul of Robert Holthup.
مصر.
Yes?
ينفع أدخل هاي بس معلش.
Who? دخل مين?
هاي.
Haya? She's late, dear.
ما.
She's late. She's very late. Sorry. Tell her she's very late. In the middle of his brother's next sentence, I gathered up the soul of Robert Holtzapfel. Usually, I need to exert myself to look through the ceiling. This is Death again describing his feeling when he took the soul of Robert Holtzapfel. Okay? Uh, but I was lucky in that particular building. A small section of the roof had been destroyed, so there was a hole in the ceiling of this building, the building of the hospital. I could see straight up. A meter away, Michael Holzapfel, Robert's brother, uh, was still talking. I tried to ignore him by watching the hole above me. Michael was still talking. Death was taking the soul of his brother. Death wanted to ignore him by looking through the hole in the ceiling. The sky was white but deteriorating fast. Remember, again, every time Death went to take the soul of someone, he tried to be busy thinking about the whites or the colors around him. As always, it was becoming an enormous drop sheet describing the sky. Blood was bleeding through, and in patches, the clouds were dirty like footprints in melting snow. Footprints, you ask? Well, I wonder whose those could be. Whose footprints would it be? In Frau Holzapfel's kitchen, laser red, the pages waded by unheard because the woman had just lost a son. And for me, when the Russian scenery faded in my eyes, the snow refuses to stop falling from the ceiling. The kettle is covered, and as is the table, the humans too are wearing patches of snow on their heads and shoulders. It was snowy in Stalingrad at that time. Remember, it was January 5th, 1943. The brother shivers, the woman weeps, and the girl goes on reading. Remember, we are talking about Liesel now. We are back in Malkin. Liesel is visiting Frau Holzapfel to read for her. Frau Holzapfel has just lost a child, Robert Holzapfel, and the other child maybe lost three fingers, and his left hand was still bleeding. For that's why she's there. So the girl is there to read for the woman, and it feels good to be good for something in the aftermath of the snows of Stalingrad. Okay, uh, I'll uh, stop here. I'll stop here and see you. Uh, I'd like to ask you a question, guys. Does anyone go to school physically now? Hello,
Mister,
hello.
I think no one knows.
يعني even Osama and Yusuf Awad don't go to school now. Yusuf Awad, can you hear me?
No.
You told me that you're going to attend school. So nobody at all attends school physically now. No, right? Okay, because I will be absent tomorrow. So see you Thursday, inshallah. We'll do this part, the ageless brother. And if you please, this is the first assignment I give you this term. This is 2 pages, 3, 4. Just read these 4 pages from the ageless brother here, or the ageless what? I forgot. The ageless, no, we did this part. Sorry. Just scroll up. a little bit. So guys, make sure you read these 4 pages. If you have the book from page 337 here to page 308, 9, 340. Please, because I'll make sure you read it and there will be marks for this. Just read 4 pages from 337 to 340. Beginning with this title, The Ageless Brother. The Ageless Brother. Any question, guys, about the exam, the term 3 exam and such stuff? If you want to know your mark in the exam, you can ask me. I'll tell you your mark in the exam. If you are interested, I can tell you the mark out of 40.
بس I want to know.
Hassan Ruhaim, he got 36 and a half out of 40. I gave you 2 bonus marks. Because as I told you, you were never absent.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Mister, I want to know.
This is Baghdadi.
Yes.
Baghdadi, your mark is 26 and a half out of 40. 26 and anybody else?
مستر وانا كام؟ يوسف عوض.
Yasin? Yusuf Awad?
يوسف عوض.
Yusuf Awad, you got 35, Yusuf. And I gave you 2 bonus marks. You got 30.
طب ياسين.
I gave you 2 bonus marks. 35 out of 40.
مستر جبت كام؟
Yasin, you got 32. And
حسن جود.
I gave you 2 bonus marks. Yasin also. Hassan Gouda, 30. 30 out of 40. By the way,
Mister, me too.
Who?
Me too, I want to know. Chiara.
Kiara, okay. You got 31 and a half. 31 and a half out of 40, and I gave you 2 bonus marks, Kiara, because you were never absent.
Mister, I want to know. تدرس.
Tadros 35. 35.
Mister Ganna, Guda.
Okay, wait, Ganna. Tadros, I gave you 2 bonus marks because you are rarely absent. Okay? But
Thank you, Mister.
in the first session, you were absent, Tadros. Remember, because I called your name 3 times, you didn't answer. Sorry.
Okay.
Ganna,
Mister, you said to me one time and I answered this session.
I called 3 times, not 1 time. Tadros, can you hear me? Tadros, can you hear me? Sorry, but this time I said I will not consider it. Okay, no problem. But be careful next time. Ganna Gouda? Ganna 28 and a half. 28 and a half out of 40. Okay, guys, I'll end the session now.
29 يعني.
Yeah, 29. But
ماشي.
28 and a half. Any more questions? So we have an assignment. Can anybody tell me what the assignment is? Yahya Awad, can you hear me? Yahya Awad? Yahya Awad. So this is the 3rd time. So Yahya is not here. I'll cross your name, Yahya. Sorry. Abdurrahman Walid, can you hear me? Abdurrahman? For the 2nd session, Abdurrahman, you don't answer. I'm not sure why do you join us and then leave. Okay, so we have an assignment. Hassan Ruhaim, Hassan Gouda, Yusuf Yasin. We have an assignment. Read 4 pages from 337 up to 340. The title is The Ageless. Allah, I forgot the ageless what? Can you remind me? The ageless
brother.
Yes, the ageless brother. Thank you very much. See you Thursday, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.